Bit of condensation here on the lens. Let's see if we can just clean that off. Well, that's a little bit better. Well, it's a beautiful morning down here in the southwest of England. It's the morning of Monday, 10th of September, 2010. 10? Well, what a flashback there. It's 2018. And clearly the Alzheimer's is kicking in a little early. Anyway, it is the 10th of September 2018. And on Friday, we were celebrating the Rydal District Council decision, where they voted 26-0 to reject the Tory party's proposition to make fracking planned development. Well, when I say Tory party, of course, it was based on a joint ministerial statement by Greg Clark and James Brockenshire. But it's very evident that there are clear splits within the Tory party, and I think this will be evident tomorrow when Lee Rowley, who's the MP, Conservative MP for North East Derbyshire, he initiates a parliamentary debate. Now, this isn't actually in Parliament, it's in Westminster Central Hall, I believe. And it'll be interesting to see who actually turns up, because call it a hunch, but I don't think it's going to be that well attended by other Tories. But we shall see. Kevin Hollinsnake of North Yorkshire, unlikely to attend. But it's going to put the Tories very much on the spot, and hopefully opposition MPs will attend that debate and will make their views very clear, because I'm sure that local authorities all around the country have been in contact with their MP, and I doubt whether there are any local authorities who want to see fracking become planned development, because it's the thin end of a very, very fat wedge. And basically, if fracking does become planned development, then at that point you can ask the question, what is the point of local authorities, apart from effectively carrying out the bidding of central government? Because it will literally be a situation where local authorities can operate, provided they simply rubber stamp whatever the decision of central government is at that particular time. And it's why, by the way, that county councils are in many cases being merged with government departments. And this is part of the strategy to try and literally keep local authorities on a very, very tight leash. So it's a very important debate, and I know that there's a number of people going to be making their way down to Westminster to show their disgust that the Tories should even suggest that fracking becomes planned development. On the other hand, as I have alluded to on previous occasions, consider the possibility that actually this is a brilliant strategy on the part of Greg Clark and James Brockenshire. They know fine well that they cannot pull the plug on this abomination unilaterally. They need to have massive support from around the country, so that basically when they do pull the plug, they can just say to the industry, look, you know, it wasn't us, but, you know, you never actually got social license, which you said you would. And so, you know, sorry, but it's just not going to happen. So consider the possibility that this is an absolutely brilliant strategy on their part to put a stick of dynamite under local authorities and get them to actually take a very, very serious look at the implication here, particularly in the north of England, where, you know, the Bowland Shale stretches from coast to coast. And, you know, if permitted development goes ahead, then basically, you know, it could be that a rig literally manifests at the end of your street with barely any notice whatsoever, because all they will have to do is simply advise the local authority that they've acquired a piece of land and that they're going to establish a well site. So never has it been more important than now to actually participate. Well, after the 26-0 result, in Rydal on Thursday. Friday morning was the meeting of Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council's Planning Committee, and they were discussing INEOS's application to establish a frack pad at Woodsets. And of course, this would be the third INEOS frack pad across South Yorkshire and North East Derbyshire. The other ones, of course, being at Marsh Lane and Hart Hill. And Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council voted 7-5 against INEOS having permission to establish a well site at Woodsets. But, of course, this mirrors exactly the decision that Rotherham Borough Council made about Hart Hill. And also North East or Derbyshire County Council made about Marsh Lane. Every council rejecting the INEOS application to establish a well site with in their boundaries. Yet, what does the government do? It simply rolls out the safe pairs of hands in the form of Stephen Roscoe and Elizabeth Hill. Now, these are planning inspectors, and planning inspectors are trotted out when basically local authorities make a decision that the central government doesn't like. So, you know, I think we can fairly safely predict that either Elizabeth Hill or Stephen Roscoe will be called into play here, and they will be asked to simply go through the charade of a public inquiry and then unilaterally grant INEOS permission to establish their site at Woodsets. But as we've seen, despite the INEOS injunction, local communities are still determined to rise up against this industry. And of course, what is it, about 10 days or so ago, we had a situation where the farmer who had leased the land to INEOS in Marsh Lane drove his tractor directly at a local resident, knocking him over, and then leaving the scene without showing any concern about the potential injuries that he had caused by running into this member of the local community. So actually, the bottom line is that my perspective is that this industry is beaten. It just doesn't know it yet. And, you know, like any cornered animal, then obviously that's when they get more aggressive, that's when they get more outrageous. And so, you know, consequently, it's not time to rest on our laurels yet. In fact, this could be the hardest part of the campaign, which is not just getting this industry and the government to realise that actually it's dead in the water. It's completely dead in the water. It's never going to get going in this country. The only location that's at risk of a frack is Preston New Road, this side of 2020, and a lot can happen in the ensuing 15 months or so. So there is very much all to play for. And, you know, we're getting support, I think, from some very, very interesting quarters. And, you know, a report that has recently been published by Halliburton and Schlumberger, the two largest oilfield services companies on the planet. And at a meeting in New York, the chief executive officers of both Schlumberger and Halliburton made the observation that from their perspective, the US shale boom is over. Basically, the industry is running out of money because it's a Ponzi scheme. And, you know, basically it has to keep drilling to be able to bring in enough cash, basically just to maintain the payroll. It's certainly not profitable in the any traditional sense. And the observation was made particularly about the Permian Basin in West Texas, where the shale gas company, or oil companies there, have drilled literally thousands of wells that have not yet been completed. And many of these wells are what is known as child wells. In other words, the main well has started to deplete. So another well is drilled within the immediate proximity of the main well. in readiness to establish, you know, some greater return. But the reality is that the companies haven't even got the money to be able to complete these child wells. And the primary reason being is that it is now well known that the child wells are never anything near as productive as the main well, which means that they have to drill even more. And consequently, you know, there just isn't the manpower, there isn't the infrastructure to be able to bring these wells online. Coupled with which, basically, the pipeline capacity in the US is now literally being pushed to the limit, and we are seeing more and more pipeline tragedies where the constant usage of the pipelines prevents the maintenance. And of course, this is basically the story of BP and the Trans-Alaskan pipeline. When they took responsibility for it, they didn't maintain it, and then there were horrendous leaks across the Arctic tundra. And we're not getting this reported in the lamestream media in the UK, funnily enough, but every day there is a new leak in the US pipelines or railroad accidents where the transports are leaving the rails and causing spillage. So basically, this is an industry that's got absolutely nothing going for it except the commitment of David Cameron and George Osborne some 7-8 years ago now, that shale gas is part of the future and we will make it happen. Well, neither Cameron nor Osborne are anywhere near to be seen these days. So consequently, they're out of the picture. And unfortunately, they've left a legacy for the likes of Theresa May and Greg Clark, James Brockenshire, etc., to pick up the pieces. And they desperately want shot of it. But they don't have the cojones just to pull the plug for fear that companies like INEOS will unleash major legal actions against them. Always a possibility, of course. But, you know, at some point, there's going to have to be some recognition by the industry that basically it just isn't going to happen here. And an increasing number of people all around the country are determined to ensure that that's the case. Meanwhile, of course, people will remember that Jim Ratcliffe was in the media for many reasons recently, being the UK's wealthiest man based on INEOS debt. He was knighted once it was announced that he was Britain's wealthiest man. And then once again, he subsequently left the country to take up residence in Monaco, rather than have to pay taxes on his obscene wealth in the UK. Well, he was also in the news for his apparent philanthropy in buying up large tracts of Iceland, supposedly to protect these areas of the country. So, you know, whilst destroying large areas of the UK, he apparently was going to protect large areas of Iceland. But information is now reaching me from Iceland that people in Iceland are wisening up to his strategy, because he is buying large tracts of land where it's reported that there are significant shale deposits, both onshore and offshore, in the relatively shallow waters over the eastern side of Iceland, and where there is or there are plans to build a major port. So people in Iceland are now starting to join the dots and realise that Ratcliffe actually has no interest whatsoever in protecting the wild environment of eastern Iceland. He is simply hedging his bets by buying up large tracts of land, and then it won't be too long before he's looking to blag and persuade the Icelandic government that he needs to conduct seismic surveys in that area and then establish exploratory well sites, and then shoot for shale, on the basis that it would be cheaper to ship the shale gas from Iceland than it is from the US. It's a shorter sea route. So, you know, this is, of course, how a corporatist thinks. You know, they do have the capability and the capacity to think long term. And buying up large tracts of Iceland looks like it's part of a longer term strategy to protect the cost of sales by, if you can't get established in the UK, which is of course looking less and less likely, then rather than ship the gas from the US, then establish his own shale gas production facilities in Iceland and then ship from Iceland. So my thanks to those people in Iceland who have done their research and sent me that information, and I shall be putting more of this into the public domain. And of course I'm encouraging the people in Iceland to do the same, so that any search of Jim Ratcliffe and Iceland actually highlights the concerns that his long-term game plan is certainly not based on altruism. It's just based on what we would expect: greed. Okay, well, that's it from me today. I am not going to do a live stream tomorrow. I'll be back on Wednesday morning. A lot of work to do this week in helping the communities to prepare to challenge the iGas injunction. And of course, this is an injunction that was awarded in secret by the same judge that awarded INEOS their injunction. And that secret hearing set a very, very difficult timescale. Obviously, they are hoping that nobody has the time to mount a challenge. So that challenge has to be pulled together literally this week in readiness for a hearing, which is currently scheduled for the 2nd of October. That's Tuesday, the 2nd of October at the courts in Fetter Lane, right in the heart of the city. And as we well know, the courts in the city, the commercial courts, have one objective, and that is commerce. And so it's going to be a very interesting hearing, I'm sure. If nothing else, it will demonstrate yet again that commerce takes absolute priority over the health and well-being of people in this country, particularly those people who have the misfortune to live in what the government terms the desolate north. So there's never been a time when it's been more important to participate, whether it's helping prepare the challenge to the iGas injunction, whether it's going down to London tomorrow to show your support for Lee Rowley and his debate to try and get fellow MPs to realise the folly of this proposal to make fracking planned development. And if you can't get to London, then certainly get online and do search for planned development and frack-free Rydal, because on the frack-free Rydal website there are some very poignant and pertinent guidelines to help people understand exactly what fracking, what planned development entails, and providing some guidelines on putting your own response into that. So thanks for joining me today. You have a great week. It looks like, well, certainly here in the southwest, we're in for a few more days of the Indian summer. And I'll be back with you on Wednesday morning at 8:30. You have a great day.